Professor Edgar, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
As a forensic anthropologist, part of your job is to look at human remains, and maybe that's just a skeleton, and try to answer the question, who was this person? Why has that been so difficult when it comes to Native Americans?
Well, the primary reason it's difficult for Native Americans is because it's difficult for everyone. It's no matter who you are, it's difficult. But for Native American remains, there's a specific problem which has to do with a lack of comparative samples. What a forensic anthropologist really does is limit the pool of missing persons an unknown individual is compared to. So it's rarely the forensic anthropologist's job to say that this set of bones was this person in life. That's not usually something we do. That happens with comparison of dental remains or comparison of x-rays or with DNA. But instead, what the forensic anthropologist does with regard to identification is we help narrow the pool of missing persons for comparison. And so if you have, of course, if you have all the people in the world that are missing and we have one set of human remains that we want to compare them to, it's difficult. There's not a giant database out there that allows that kind of comparison. Instead, we have to say, all right, well, is this person male or female? And that's going to make the pool of comparison much smaller. Is this person 25 or 75? And that's going to make the pool different. And to make that comparison, to say is it male or female, or to see how old it is, what we basically do is use a bunch of statistics to compare our one unknown person to a bunch of known people. And so we know what males and females look like in their skeleton, and we know what 25-year-olds and 75-year-olds look like in their skeleton. The pool of comparison of known individuals of Native American descent is very, very small.
And why is that? Why is this pool so small? They're not a terribly small percentage of the population.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of really good reasons why the Native American pool is very small, and most of it has to do with the fact that the measurements, the known people we have, come from documented skeletal collections. And so these are people who, upon their death, have donated their remains to museums. And that opens up such a ball of problems, such a twist for Native Americans who are in general much more interested in removing their remains, their ancestors' remains from museums, than adding their remains. There's very, very, very good reasons why Native Americans on average would be untrustworthy of science. They have been abused by science, so why should they trust us? We have taken their remains and not let them go despite requests. So there's very many good reasons why Native Americans would not want to donate to their museums, to museums. But there's this unintended consequence, which is that it's very difficult to have known comparisons.
There's a database that I read about that folks like you use to make these comparisons. And apparently most of the Native American remains in this database are from the 1800s. Is that right?
That is right. So that's because that's what's in museums. So for example, if you look at it's called the Forensic Data Bank, and the statistical program that we use for comparison is called FORDISC, and it draws on what's in the Forensic Data Bank. And so the Forensic Data Bank has over 1,000 people primarily of European descent, white folks, and hundreds and hundreds of African Americans, and even, a couple of hundred Hispanic people. And it's also got Chinese people, and it's got Vietnamese people. The entire sample of Native Americans in that data bank is about 90, but 75 of those are from the 19th century. Now, they're known individuals. Go ahead.
So they're old records, but humans are humans. What's the difference?
Well, if humans were humans, then none of this comparison would work. If there was no pattern differences among skeletons, then this would be beside the point. But there are differences, and they change over time. Humans change over time. So the goal of the research that we're taking up is twofold. It's one, to figure out if a skeleton that we have is Native American or not. But a second part we have is to figure out how tall they were, for example. And one thing that's clear is that all Americans are taller today than they were in the 1800s on average. But we don't really know how much that's true for Native Americans. And we don't know if proportions are the same. So there's something called secular change, and that's like change that happens in the average of human bodies, but is not necessarily genetic. And that's, nutritional, and it has to do with the presence of antibiotics and different behavioral kinds of things. And so, maybe those 19th century skulls are representative of contemporary Native Americans, but I don't know, because I don't have any contemporary Native Americans, or I haven't had contemporary Native Americans to compare.
So we have this problem that is particularly dire. We have thousands, as many as 6,000 a year, missing and murdered Indigenous women. Mm-hmm. And we have a problem with this database being, basically unable to help in that effort. What has UNM done that is special to contribute to the solution here?
So UNM is most definitely at the forefront of improving this situation. And it grows out of a much larger project called the New Mexico Decedent Image Database. And it's a confluence of events that and a lot of foresight on various people's parts that allows this to happen. So a little history starts with 2010, when the Office of the Medical Investigator moved into a brand new building. Now, New Mexico is really unique in that we have one statewide office as our medical investigator system, and it's based in a university. So it has a research component to it that not all medical examiners do. The old facility was old. And then we moved into the new facility. They moved into the facility. I wasn't part of it yet. And the folks there in charge had the foresight to predict that advanced imaging could be an important component in the forensic investigation of death. And in 2010, this was pretty cutting edge. There were not many medical investigators or examiners around the country or around the world who used computed tomography or CT in their work. So when they built the new building, they put in a CT scanner and they put in an MRI imaging machine. So those are two capabilities that are actually still not common around the country or around the world. Most people do not have access to that.
And so the Office of the Medical Investigator here uses CAT scans and MRIs on almost every individual that comes through the office. Is that right?
That's right. And one of the benefits is that it means that more individuals can be, a thorough death investigation can happen with that image and an external exam, and fewer individuals need full autopsy. And especially for some communities, including the Native American community, that's a really big deal.
Yeah, not having to do that.
That's right.
So what kind of information are you gathering for this database from these CAT scans and MRIs?
So the MRIs are actually not in this database. They end up being kind of specialized. And besides, we have enough, the CAT scans are enough. So the database that we're drawing on, this New Mexico Decedent Image Database, or NMDID, covers the span from 2010 to 2017, and it includes everybody who had a CT scan that passed through that office. And it comes out to be about 15,243 individuals. It's amazing. It actually represents 11% of the people who died in New Mexico during that time period. So the kind of research that can come from that is really not just about missing and murdered Indigenous women, but many, many, many other things. This is just one project. And we have made this data, we've de-identified it, and we've made it available to the research public.
So you took all the personal information. There's no names attached.
There's no names, there's no birth dates, there's not even a zip code past 3 digits. So any piece of information that could be used to identify these people has been removed or is covered in the data use agreement that a researcher has to sign. So there's lots and lots of research coming out of this, not just one thing.
What are some of the things that people are using this database for?
So there's a person looking at sarcoidosis, which is a disease that can sometimes, I didn't even know this, but it can result from cancer treatment. And so they're looking at that. There are people who are looking at, I just got a request today for somebody who wants to look at variation in the shape of the cheekbone so that they can better make implants for people who have broken cheekbones and need reconstructive surgery. There's people who are looking at the evolution of bipedalism. There's people who are looking at, well, there's actually a couple of researchers that are using scans of people who died of pneumonia to compare to scans of people who are dying of COVID today. So that's just a touch. There's people looking at improving automobile safety. And so there's about 100 different researchers right now already drawing on this resource.
So you have these CAT scans, and then you have all of this other information. How did you get the other information about these people?
Yeah, it's the other information that makes this super valuable. That's really the most important part. So the information comes from 2 different sources. One is the medical legal investigation of the death. So that includes the autopsy, if there is one, but it also includes the death investigator, who's the person that leaves the office and goes out to a scene, and asks family members questions and all those kinds of things. All that's in there. And then we also had a cadre of students calling the next of kin of decedents and asking them a survey of questions. And of course, no one was obligated to answer these questions, and they could answer some questions and not all questions. But what was really amazing to me is how many people were really pleased to contribute this information because they had an understanding that their family member's death with this information could help people in the future.
That is amazing. So you did a pilot study and you have about 250 records that specifically relate to Native American individuals.
We actually have about 1,800 people in the database who are Native American. For a little more than 250, we know their tribal affiliation.
And that's a hard detail to pin down from a skeleton, isn't it?
I would never get it from the skeleton. That's not something you get from the skeleton. That's something you get from the investigative report or from the next of kin.
But that can be really valuable in narrowing the field of someone you're looking for. Is that right?
Possibly. We don't really know yet how much variation there is among groups. I don't know how different they are, but this is how we're going to find that out.
So what do you think the impact will be? There are 1,000 people in the database, 1,000 Anglo people in the database you mentioned earlier, this very small number of mostly old records of Native American people. You've got all of these really detailed records to add to that pile. What's the potential impact?
So here's what I'm really hoping for and why I'm doing this project. My hope is that we can shorten the time that an unknown person is missing. So, when someone goes missing, whether they are murdered or not, there's a time that's very stressful for a family. And in fact, I've been through this, so I can relate. There's a time that you don't know what happened to your family member. And when skeletal remains are found, if we either can't identify this person as Native American or misidentify them as Hispanic or white or whatever, if we misidentify them, it's going to make it more challenging to match them with the correct missing persons report and then attempt to identify them. So that's what I hope is the real and practical value of this, is that we will, and I believe it will happen, that we will shorten the time that families don't know what happened to their family member.
Professor Edgar, thank you so much for talking to us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.